Hi there, this is Mark, and I am sitting in front of a Pete's coffee place, Pete's Cafe in Redwood City, and I am taking advantage of the beautiful sunny day and doing another reading from the Golden Present Daily Inspirational Readings by Sri Swami Satchidananda. I've been coming down here for a year and a few months to teach at a startup. They just launched their new app. It's called Innit. INNIT, and it's a really cool app. I think it's only available on iOS right now, on iPhones. But if you download it, it helps you come up with recipes based on your dietary plan, and it tells you how to make it, little videos, how to do everything. It's pretty wild. So I'm really fun. It's really fun. I got to see that today, their actual launch. So this is the reading for December 6th. Finally caught up to the day. And this is, the soul itself is pure consciousness. This is a question and answer. When the soul joins all other souls in its final chapter, does it retain a consciousness, or is that lost? Swami Satchidananda says, the soul itself is pure consciousness. So it retains its pure consciousness state, but it doesn't retain the individual consciousness that is part of the mind. Once you achieve that state, the product of the mind is gone. Like a dream that is gone when you wake up, the mental consciousness constantly varies. All your ideas, thoughts, experiences are not stored in the self, capital S self, but in the mind. Here we should understand the difference between soul and self. Again, self with a capital S. The soul is a mixture of self and mind. Or in other words, the soul is the self reflected in the mind, the mental mirror. So it is a reflection of the self that you call soul, and that seems to have all the colors and the modifications of the mind. But once you raise your level of consciousness to pure consciousness, then there is no mind at all. Along with the mind, all this mental dream goes away. You don't retain any of those old memories, but until that total liberation, you do retain them. Awesome. So this is getting into basically the basics of yoga philosophy, and these are spoken about in the beginning of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and it helps to tell us in that first book of that first section of this 4-chapter book, what is the mind and how does the mind operate? So we're learning about this state of pure consciousness that is not connected to these everyday thoughts of the mind and these fluctuations of the mind, but that it's a state where we forget all of that. We basically forget the ego, we forget the small self, and we start to really realize and understand the higher self, but we don't get there until we get there. You know, we're sort of created in this way where we do have an ego. It functions for a very important reason. We're not trying to kill the ego as much as I feel like we're trying to resolve and make peace with the fact that we do have an ego that has its own function to help propel us into understanding our higher self. I think that's its job. Sometimes people think its job is to flare our importance up, the small self's importance, but it's just, I think, a misdirected effort. It's sort of like a young person trying to give their version of what they think is the meaning of life versus a wise sage who has, through time, gone through the journey. Now, actually, sometimes a very young person who's still connected to their pure consciousness may have a good answer, but a lot of times that gets taken away, as life gets rolling. Different life experiences cause us to forget who we truly are, and our ego gets more emphasized through all the marketing and branding of things, which, only if we're done in a more positive way, but that's for us to wake up to. So it's actually not that it should or shouldn't be a certain way. It's happening there once again for a reason. And that reason is we are clever thinkers, and maybe the only way out of this is to get caught for a little bit, to have our ego be the thing that we think is the all-important thing, and then to eventually have that trip us up, and we learn from that. And that's, sometimes I think about that in the world where I see people making certain decisions and choices that seem based on a selfish place, based on their own ego, desire, and that at some point it's going to come around that it'll be revealed to them that that's the painful option, but it's not for me to decide when that is. You know, if anything, by being more of what I believe is true in the world and sharing that I can offer that into the world versus tying in with some of the negative energy. So I want to think, how can I tie in with the positive energy and think more positively, do more positive actions, let that be the ripple that sends out messages rather than be the one who's complaining, nagging, pointing the finger, thinking I know what's best for everybody. Everybody has a different journey. They're all in a different place on their karmic practice, karmic wheel. So it seems that with this reading, we're limited to be able to understand how can we imagine what it's like, you know, once we join all the other souls. I think our best is to think of what is it when we feel at most peace, what is it when we feel there's no inclination to need to judge others or to fix anything or to, you know, make declarations about what is right and wrong. Sometimes even that, you know, feeling like we are, but we're right, you know, we know what's true. Sometimes even that can trip us up. So how can we even release from that and just have more of this state of equanimity about ourselves and not feel like we're just, you know, fumbling through life as a doormat, but that we really are moving towards this more elevated, more spiritual self. And sometimes maybe you need a cup of coffee to wake yourself up, to be able to be like, ah! And sometimes you need to go into a place of meditation, and coffee is the opposite of what you're going to need. Well, I just saw this table and this chair, and I thought I'm going to just come here and get this video made for the day, so thanks for watching. Yeah, if you're interested in more about this, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are an interesting book to look at. And I have found that it requires a teacher who knows and understands the sutras to help guide you through it. Otherwise, you might just read through it quickly and not get the full understanding. But even if you do, you know, there's the first chapter in particular can be very useful. And if that makes sense to you, then the second chapter, I've often heard to hold off on the third and fourth chapters until you have somebody who really can guide you, because we can really misunderstand it. So, all right, that's all for today. Thanks for being a part of this, and I'll see you soon.